Well, yesterday we've already talked about the lineage and transmission of Kagyu. Especially the relationship between Idam and the Guru, out of which the Guru is more important than Idam. And then Marpa Lotsawa asked his Guru, saying that, who will inherit my Dharma lineage? And then Naropa asked him, who is your dearest disciple that you think most highly of? And then Marpa reported by saying that it must be my disciple, whose name is Awo Tuchen, or Topaga, that is Milarepa. He said that I treat him as the one that is more important than my heart. Hearing that, Naropa joined his palms together and then spoke the verse of praise, saying that like the sun shining on the snow mountain, in the northern land, in a place of darkness, there is one called Topaga. To this venerate one I prostrate. This verse is very well known. This is given by Milarepa's Guru's Guru. Milarepa's Guru, that is Marpa Lotsawa, and his Guru Naropa spoke of this verse. He said that just like how the snow mountain being lit by the sunshine, which looks absolutely magnificent. And then he said that in the northern land, in the place of darkness, there is the one called Topaga. After finishing this verse, he paid homage in the direction of the land of Tibet. At that time, the mountains and trees also paid homage together with the great master. This happened at Odantapuri University, situated at Hiranya Prabhat mountain, not so far from Nalanda University. The Udantapuri University or temple monastery is one of the most important university for the studies of Vajrayana. I've seen photos of this particular place, and now this place has been taken by the heretics and transformed into charnel ground. I've seen photos of it, and it doesn't look very auspicious. At the time when Naropa paid homage to the direction of the land Tibet, all the mountains and trees also paid homage and leaning towards that direction. And Naropa lived there Naropa at that time lived over there, and these days, if you go to visit the place, you will notice the mountains and trees also would have been slightly towards the north and land of Tibet. Later, on another occasion, Marpa Lotsawa told Milarepa, saying that you need to make an observation of your dreams to have a clear idea of how your Dharma lineage will be propagated. That evening, Milarepa dreamt of 4 pillars in the 4 directions, and in particular, on top of the northern pillar, there was an eagle. That eagle gave birth to a baby eagle, and then numerous baby eagles filled the sky. Marpa then explained to him about the dreams, saying that the 4 pillars in your dream predicted that I have the 4 great disciples who are Mitten Tsopo of Tsongrong and Turton Wangye of Topo, also Ngokton Chodor of Shun, and you, Milarepa of Katang. The eagle of the northern pillar symbolizes you, and the baby eagle, it gave birth to
公堂的米拉，对对，然后刚才是米拉这把，然后就刚才那个就生下的那只效应的话呢，实际上你做下的如太阳一般的
symbolizes your sun-like disciple Gampopa.
这个月光童子，对，然后虚多效应遍布虚空的话，表示说这个冈波巴月光童子的法门，也就是说是。
The flock of eagle filling the sky, symbolizing the lineage disciples of Gampopa, will spread the Kagyu teachings throughout the world. Back in 2018, I've given the teachings of Gampopa. I believe I taught for 28 classes. I think it's been compiled into 2 books which contain about 300,000 words. Now that we have made a connection to Gampopa through the teaching of the garland of noble path, especially I have given an extensive explanation on this teaching. Now we have made an auspicious connection to Gampopa. We can see Gampopa is such a great master, and Prince Rinpoche specifically spoke of him over here. And then exactly as Milarepa, just as Marpa predicted by explaining Milarepa's dreams in the time of Gampopa, his most outstanding disciple, that is Dusum Khenpo, that's the first Karmapa, and then the second was Pakshi, and the third one Renjun Dorje, correct? And then protector of migrating being Pakmo Drupa. Pakmo Drupa, is he of the same age of Ponso Rinpoche at that time said that they were born in the same year, but I wasn't sure if it was true. So later I looked into it, and exactly as he said, they were born in the same year. They are of the same age. So sometimes we can see that the great masters, they really have a great pertain of memory. Their lineage disciples form the 4 major schools of Dragpo Kagyu, which are Barum Kagyu and Patru Kagyu, Karma Kagyu, and Tsalpa Kagyu. The Patru Kagyu school later splinter into 8 sub-schools of Kagyupa. Now in the explanation of the Kagyupas, or the introduction of Kagyupas, especially in Bhutan and places like such, the Kagyupa schools are still quite prosperous, and they would include all the 4 major schools and then the 8 sub-schools of Kagyupa too. So Drukung Kagyu, Drukpa Kagyu, Taklung Kagyu, Yasang Kagyu, Trupu Kagyu, and Shusang Kagyu, Yalpa Kagyu, and Marsang Kagyu. As such, the Dharma teaching of Kagyu tradition spread through the world. If you focus on the Drukpa Kagyu, you think about the propagation, people would all agree that this teaching is reached even further than where an eagle could fly after flying 18 days in the same direction. Not so sure how far an eagle would be able to fly for one day and one night. Unlike the scientists and biologists nowadays, that they would use different devices and cameras to track the eagles and their distance of flight of the eagles. We don't quite know the distance. Later, the spreading of the lineage of the red crown Karmapa and the black crown Karmapa was much more widespread. According to the historical record, in the pure vision of the first Karmapa, 100,000 Dakinis manifested in the pure vision and offered their hair as a black crown. to the Karmapa as a symbol of his accomplishment. Later, the Mongol emperor in the Yuan dynasty offered a physical replica of that crown to the fifth Karmapa, which has been passed down to the current Karmapa. And then the current Karmapa, the 16th Karmapa, in fact, told the government, saying that my black crown is currently not over here and I need to retrieve it from the outside. And that's how he was able to travel abroad with the permission of the Chinese government back in the 1985. And that was his skillful means when he said that whenever I retrieve it, I will come back. When Phuntsog Rinpoche traveled to the West, the 16th Karmapa had already passed away. The red crown was offered by the Chinese emperor to the first Sharmapa, Drapa Singye, as a replica of Karmapa's black crown. Also, the Tibetan legend says that once in Rati Bunzong of the Minyak, in the Minyak region, there was 100,000 monks from Kagyu school who were able to fly at the same time. You may see it as a legend, as a folklore, but there are manifestations such as in the Gato temple. There are 100,000 people who attained rainbow body. Now that there are 6 million Tibetans, which is probably the most flourishing population of Tibetans throughout history. So there are different people who would question, could there be 100,000 people who attend rainbow body in Gato monastery? And could they really fly at the same time? I think it might be difficult to go back into the historical records and to seek the answer from the archaeologists. However, if we were to look at the population of Tibetans now, which is about 6 million, back then, if there could be 100,000 Tibetans who could fly, well, many of you probably would have questions about that, isn't it? However, I think including the records in India and the folk records, they usually would talk about how many monks have different kinds of miraculous powers and how many of them also attained rainbow body. Even in the biography of Longchenpa, there are different records, the same as the biography of Melon Dorje. They also describe the incidents or the kinds of descriptions of monastics who could fly. They would use their monastic robe as their wings, and then they were able to fly to the Gato monastery. When I went to Garon, there are lots of stories and lots of folk stories telling about the miraculous powers of monastics and who could fly here and there. And Phuntsog Rinpoche quoted this particular story. It could be from Gampopa, from Minyak, could be from different places. Minyak is Dao and Kanding, and those are the places called Minyak. It is said that there were monastics, lamas in Minyak who were able to remember history. And when Phuntsog Rinpoche went to Minyak, over there met that lama whose name is Aso, and Phuntsog Rinpoche also asked, do you have 100,000 monastics who could fly? Do you remember the specific places and so on and so forth? So he said that it's been for a while, for maybe about 800 years or so. And then to continue, he said that as such, the lineage master of Kagyu school were like well-ordered golden mountains that appear in the world one after another up until today. When the 16th Karmapa and your own guru Children Trungpa Rinpoche came and enlightened the modern world. The above is just a very brief introduction of the main lineage masters of Kagyu. If I were to talk about them in more detail, the recounting of the life stories of each of them alone could not be finished in a few months. When I was ill during my studies in middle school, I went to the lower part of the village for half a month. And then the doctor, whose name was Ake Dalo, he would read me the biography of Milarepa, and I really enjoyed the story. I listened to it every single day. But 15 days of the leave was already up, so I had to go back to school, and I was feeling quite unsatisfied with not having to finish the stories, listening to the stories of Milarepa. So over here, when we listen to this part of the teaching, it really makes me feel to go back in time and listening to the stories of Milarepa again. If he were to speak of the stories of Milarepa, he would go on for months, I'm sure. The above is just a very brief introduction of the main lineage master of Kagyu. And now I will talk about the introduction of actual practice transmission of the Kagyu lineage masters. There are three main transmissions: the uncommon secret mantra practice that leads one to attainment of Vajradhara, transmitted from the Mahasiddha Tilopa. Well, this part he spoke of the three kinds of transmissions. That was the first one from Tilopa, and the second one, the joint practice of the Sutrayana and Mantrayana, transmitted from Lodrak Marpa Lotsawa, in which Sutrayana practice is referred to the Sutra Mahamudra, or the Mahamudra of reality, and then Mantrayana practice refers to the Mantra Mahamudra, or the Mahamudra of union of bliss and emptiness, which is what had talked about in the Vitara Tantra Shastra. And then the third one, the stage-by-stage practice transmitted from Jesu Milarepa, that starts with the beginning practice of abandoning all non-virtue, continue with the practice of Tumo, which is wisdom, mystic heat, and then the magical body, and the essence of Mahamudra that will be realized as a result of stabilizing the preceding practices. In this way, the Vajrayana practice of sacred mantra will reach the fruition of Vajradhara in the single lifetime. Now we'll mainly draw from the transmission of Milarepa, because it's the easy path that could be practiced for all kinds of practitioners of a greater or lesser capacity. Now, to follow the path, the disciple must first understand the very nature of suffering in cyclic existence, which then will generate the mind of renunciation. The second, one need to cherish others more so than oneself, and just generate the awakened mind of bodhicitta. And thirdly, one need to cultivate and meditate on the pure view that is none other than the mind transmission of Vajradhara, and thus achieve the fruition of Buddhahood.